Welcome back, friends, to part 2 of this portrait video. I'll leave a link below to part 1. In part 1, we made an acrylic underpainting you see on your right. I started this from a photo I got from pixels.com. Then I made the photo look more like an oil painting you see on your right. So today you'll see me put this on canvas, step by step with explanations. As I explained in video 1, I'm putting this oil painting on watercolor paper treated with acrylic gesso. These are colors that I use in almost all my oil paintings, starting out with lemon yellow, then light red, raw sienna, burnt umber, phthalo blue, or ultramarine, Payne's gray, alizarin crimson, and sometimes you'll see I use a little cadmium red. I never use commercial greens. I mix my greens using lemon yellow and Payne's gray. And there's the cadmium red. Mix up a little pink for the flowers in the background. And of course a little blue. And here we go. I can put much more paint on the canvas or the paper with a palette knife. I should probably be using ultramarine blue. It's got a little more violet color in it. A little alizarin crimson will fix that, however. I picked up a little accidental red in there, but it'll work out. Now I use a brush to get a little closer to the subject. If I need a little darker green, I just add a little tiny bit more Payne's gray. I'm adding a little more blue than in the original photograph. The brush I'm using is a filbert brush, and it's got some pretty stiff bristles on it. I'm also adding a little burnt umber in here also. Now I'm coming back to the palette knife. This blends things a little bit, but to do this you'll notice that every stroke I clean the palette knife off. This is very important when you do this. If not, you'll just make mud out of the background. Wipe the palette knife off every stroke. This technique also makes sure that there's no little tiny pockets of white showing through in the background. My intentions in portraiture is to keep the edges either soft or roughed, kind of undone if you will. And I'm putting some alizarin crimson right out of the tube onto the canvas. And that mixes well with the pink that's already there. And again, a little more burnt umber here and there. I'll start with the shadow areas in the hat using just blue mixture that I've already mixed up. I really enjoy mixing the colors on the canvas rather than the palette. Still using that same filbert brush. And as you'll see, I'm adding a little pink in there just to make the blue a little more violet. Which again, I could have done with ultramarine blue. That color has a little more violet in it. As you can see, I don't want too much detail in the hat, just suggested colors. I'm adding just a touch of raw sienna to warm up the white in the flower, just a tiny bit. Got a little too much blue on the brush there, but it's easy to fix, as you can see. For underneath the hat, I'm mixing a little bit of light red and raw sienna together for a warmer color. I love that warm color underneath her hat. and a little bit of burnt umber also to that color. I want the brush strokes underneath that hat to be obvious. For the hair and all the dark colors for that matter, I'm not using any black or like Payne's gray. I mix a little raw sienna, burnt umber, and blue. Makes great hair color for a dark hair person. Now I also add light red in there also. You can see some of that blue quite clearly in there. And when all else fails, a little finger painting never hurts. I really like the warm colors on her skin underneath the hat. A lot of raw sienna, a little light red makes those warm colors. I've gotten my white contaminated with a little blue that I didn't want in there. Little palette knife scraping that off. Again, you can see mixing the color on the canvas. Now, back to underneath the back of the hat there, some nice warm colors. And here, I don't want any blending. I want to see brush strokes underneath the hat there. And I'm saving the hair around her face for the very last. When we're painting clothing, like the top of her dress, it's always very enjoyable just to loosen up and mix the colors on the canvas, show your brush strokes, and have fun. On the top of her dress here, this is another area where the ultramarine blue would have worked much better. However, again, just adding a little alizarin crimson in there will do the same thing. The raw sienna in some of the shadow areas just really warms things up. I like that. I want the highlights on the edge of the hat to be very undone. You'll notice here that when I soften up the edges here, that I wipe off the brush every time, and that helps quite a bit so we don't get any unwanted colors in there. Just kind of soften up those edges. You'll notice here also that I've changed to a round, soft-haired brush. Okay, now on our hat here, it's the same thing. By cleaning off the brush every stroke, it's great for smoothing out some of the hard edges. This is also a good method to kind of accentuate the strokes, maybe even change the direction of a stroke. A nice clean brush every time. Use nice positive strokes. Now that you can see on the top of her dress here, I've gone back to the filbert brush with a little more stiffer bristle in it. I want those brush marks to show. Again, you can see me wiping the brush every time too. Just clean off the brush. I just want to show those strokes in the paint that's already on the canvas. Now on her neck, back to the softer brush. Sometimes you just can't get that brush to behave. A little finger work never hurts. Now I'm switching to a brush with a little sharper point on it, a little fresher brush, starting in on some of the sharper details on her face. Hopefully now you can see the advantage of having that underpainting. Most of it gets covered over completely. However, it's a great reference. If we get lost, just scrape it off and start over. Thought I'd switch the palette over to the other side of the painting. Being right-handed, it'll work better here for your view here. These are not new colors I'm introducing here. I'm just moving them over to the other side of the canvas or the palette so you can see what colors I'm using. Raw umber, cadmium red, and yellow. Mostly some warmer reddish colors for her mouth. Straight out of the tube, burnt umber was just a little bit too dark there for the eyebrow. A little palette knife scraping off just fixes the whole problem. You can see here, especially with the eyes now, that this underpainting is slowly disappearing. And when we can just now add some detail. But having it there underneath just increases our confidence. Keeps us kind of loose, if you will, knowing that if you mess up, the original design is right there underneath. Here you'll see me mixing up a little bluish grayish color, very light, for the white of the eye. Though the whites of the eye are never really true white. The white of the eye on her left side is reflecting a little bit of that hat color. A few more touch-ups of the top of her dress, just to show a few more strokes, and a few more highlights. When doing the hair around the face, you'll notice that I put several different colors on the brush. As I move it on the canvas, different colors will come up. This makes the same effect as the light that's shining on her hair has several different colors. This is another area where we can't tighten up. We have to make quick, smooth strokes. Well, I think that's good enough for now. If you've enjoyed this and found this informative, please click that like button and subscribe so you can be notified for my next one. I'm Steve Rathburn. Thanks for watching. Catch you on the next one.